In a legend as old as time, there lived a king whose name was Ekena. Ekena ruled over 5 villages in peace and harmony. He was loved by his people because he was kind and generous. His reign was prosperous because he led with wisdom and justice. Every man made wealth according to their hard work and diligence. Corruption and laziness did not thrive in the land. Sadly, not everyone shared the same dreams and desires with the king and the ways of his leadership. His younger brother Ifediora was filled with jealousy and greed for the throne. He had never done an honest work in his life, and he wanted riches and power. His wicked mind conceived that the only way to achieve this was to become king. With the help of his lazy friends who couldn't wait to squander the riches of the royal treasury, they hatched a plan to kill King Ikena. Because they couldn't shed any blood, they simply invited Ikena to a private feast to celebrate the prosperity of the land. They poisoned his drink, and before long the king was dead. Ifediora and his friends raised alarm and denied knowing what happened to Ikena. His death was strange to the villagers because he had been in perfect health. No one would ever imagine that Ifediora would be behind it. The people mourned for months even after he was buried. Ifediora was getting impatient with every passing day. He couldn't suggest his coronation to the kingmakers so they wouldn't suspect his involvement in Ikena's death. As next in line to the throne, he already had access to the king's fortune and had already started spending it on women and wasteful living. 2 months passed away, and the people badly needed a king. The coronation day came, and Ifediora was crowned the new king. He prepared for this day, and upon his status as king, he declared some new laws that would take effect immediately. One of the laws says that all the maidens in the 5 kingdoms set to get married are to come and spend a week in the palace for special assessment by the king. The people shouted in surprise. They couldn't understand what he would want the young women who were soon to be wives to be doing in his palace. Another of the new laws was that every family must provide the royal house with 3 goats, 1 cow, and 30% of their farm produce every harvest season. Wails of women and murmurs of women filled the air. Ifedira didn't care. He believed it was his right no matter what it would cost the people. From that day and for the next 7 years, the land knew no peace. If the maidens were not violated by the king before their marriages, then properties were being stolen by Ifedira's friends. And to add to the problems, families were getting poorer and poorer with each demand from the royal house. For any offense committed, punishment was homage and gifts to Ifedira. The people couldn't take it anymore, but they didn't know what to do. Even if they got rid of Ifedira, who would take his place? People who benefited from his reign grew in numbers, and chaos would break out if they didn't have a solid plan in place. A group of women decided to take it up and devise a plan with some travelers that were coming from the east. The travelers were only meant to pass through Ifedira's territory on their way, but they would stay for a few days with the people to finally end the king's reign. On a bright early morning, the strange travelers appeared before the king and he welcomed them. They claimed to have an interesting proposal that would make Ifedira a rich man and happy man. The king was eager to hear, and one of them started. We are travelers from the east, a home of riches and power, greater than many men have ever seen before. We go in search of men and women worthy enough to wield this power. They perform a ritual, and if it's successful, our gods of infinite wealth will dwell in them, and they and their descendants will become great and invisible forever. As expected, Ifedora was already drooling at the proposal. When do we start, my friends? He panted. Right now, one of them replied. The king, his friends, and the travelers all headed to the sacred forest of the unborn. The sacred forest of the unborn was the only spiritual edifice that held the five villages together. Everything the travelers said were true. They only didn't mention that anyone who fails the ritual would die by thunder. This was the plan they made with the women of the kingdoms to get rid of their wicked king. The ritual required Ifedora to walk round a tree in the forest 7 times with a calabash in his hands and a guava branch in his mouth. If he makes it round the tree after the seventh time, he would live. The gods of infinite wealth only allowed him round the tree 5 times because he was a true son of the five kingdoms. After the fifth round, a loud thunder struck him down. The minute Ifedora's friends saw his lifeless body on the ground, they tried to run, but were caught and chained by the warriors waiting outside the entrance of the forest. A few days later, the travelers in the wisdom of the infinite gods chose 5 men, each of them to represent all five kingdoms, not as kings but as mouthpieces and leaders of the people. Peace was once again restored. For more amazing tales, kindly subscribe to our channel and follow us at Folklore. Bye.